Jai Hind, this is Brigadier Hemant Mahajan. The subject we are going to speak today is Russia-Ukraine war, the air aspects. The air aspects of this war has not been given too much of prominence as far as the media is concerned and as far as the analyst is concerned. We today are in the 10th week of Ukraine-Russia war, and the Air Force has been used by both sides. Air assets have been used by both sides. So what we really need to look at is as to what effect the air war has had on Russia-Ukraine war, and the most important as to what lessons should India learn from this. India's Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi is on the tour of Europe right now. He is visiting France, Germany and Denmark, the most important states as far as the Ukraine war is concerned. And there he said very clearly that war will bring out no winners, and let's say negotiations is the only answer. Some experts had predicted that Russia with its cruise missiles, early warning elements, precision guided missiles, hypersonic missiles, stealth fighters, fighter aircraft which cannot be seen on the radar, will start the war in the Gulf War style, like Desert Storm etc., by which they will carry out an overwhelming air campaign to destroy the Ukrainian Air Force and ground, hit its air defenses, command and control centers before committing its ground troops. Instead, the Russian generals neglected the initial air war, it neglected the logistics, and this later proved out to be a very costly mistake. In this talk today, we will analyze as to what are the strengths and weaknesses of Russian Air Force, strengths and weaknesses of the Ukrainian Air Force. We will compare these forces thereafter. We'll also see as to how the air war was carried out. Then thereafter, we will draw lessons which are relevant to India. The reluctance of Russia to use Air Force after few days is very perplexing, because Russian Air Force is very strong. They did not establish air superiority, neither did they have a favorable air situation which is required for ground operation. If they had one, then the ground operations could have been done with more speed. The Air Force was not used because of some reasons which have been given. One is not to cause collateral damage to the civilian areas, maybe due to the Russian overconfidence that they thought that Air Force was not required and ground forces by itself could do the war, maybe also to preserve the Russian Air Force for later use against NATO, because they at one point of time the Russians thought that the NATO may intervene and the NATO Air Force is quite strong, and also maybe due to the effective Ukrainian air defense. Today Ukraine is flooded with anti-aircraft defense, with anti-aircraft missiles which are shoulder fired in very large numbers, all of which are let's say smart missiles. The Russians and the Ukrainians, how many sorties did they carry out, how many air missions they went out is not known. Now let us compare the figures of Russia vis-a-vis Ukraine. Russia has approximately 300 combat aircraft, while the Ukrainian Air Force is less than 100. However, Russia's Air Force has been absent. They did not carry out large air strikes as were done in the Second World War. They have not used their Su-30s and Su-34s, and in fact the kind of an air campaign that they launched is quite different from what is the Western world used to. As far as the Ukrainian Air Force was concerned, it was observed that they had immediately dispersed their operations. They operated from various roads. Aim was to ensure that they were not got concentrated at any place, etc. So Russian Air Force remained dispersed, and while the Russian Air Force carried out attacks on various air bases, their effectiveness was not reduced as much as was expected. However, there is a complete mismatch of resources, and today Ukrainian fighter aircraft are basically carrying out what are called as sneak raids. attacking suddenly, maybe attacking at night, etc. And Ukrainian Air Force is also restricting itself to a defense mode and carrying out attacks once in a while. As the offensive is in the 9th week today, there is not too much of a sign of use of unarmed aerial vehicles and drones by Russia. Why this was not done is not well understood. As far as the air warfare is concerned, we have the airborne operations, we have the heliborne operations, we have the operations by the special forces. Russia tried to carry out a daring heliborne operations on the Hostomel airport, which is located outside Kyiv, which is also a home of AN series of aircraft, including the giant AN-225 transporter. Now, the capture of this Hostomel airfield in the early stage would have helped the airborne forces in Kyiv and in capture of Kyiv, etc., and it would have created an air bridge for sustained follow-on operations by the ground forces. In this operation, 6 to 7 helicopters have been shot down because it was an opposed landing. The latest Ka-52 attack helicopters were also shot down. The special forces which were involved in this aerial bridgehead were repulsed, causing 18 IL-76 to go back, turn back towards their bases. The Russians again tried another such operation in which they lost 2 IL-76. One was shot down by Ukrainian Su-27, and both these aircraft had full of paratroopers. Almost 300 paratroopers may have died in the operation, which is a very high cost when you look at operating military transport aircraft when you don't have close air support, when you don't have a favorable air situation. It was a very risky operation which shouldn't have been carried out. As far as the drones are concerned, the Russians had poor intelligence and they lost lot of people, and this was the reason for slow progress. Why weren't the drones used for carrying out surveillance, carrying out recce? This is just not understood. Maybe this was because of Ukraine's anti-drone tactics, Ukraine's good air defenses, Ukraine's electronic warfare, etc. But the fact is, lack of drones showed that Russian military operations were not planned properly. From the intelligence which is available in the open source, it is now says that Russia's ISR drones are now started tracking the Ukrainian BM-22, etc., and they have been used successfully in few operations. The Ukrainian Air Force is actually carrying out counter UAV systems during the heavy fighting around Mariupol. Ukrainian military has also used the Turkish-made TB2 combat drones, which had proved its effectiveness in Azerbaijan-Armenia war, and the Russian convoys were also hit by the Ukrainians. However, because of less number, because of some drones being shot down, attrition, the number has been reduced now. Now let's look at the long-range missiles vis-a-vis the air power or the air force. Russia has used a very large number of long-range missiles like the Caliber cruise missiles, Iskander ballistic missiles, MBRL launchers such as the Grad, the Smerch, the Hurricane, etc. They have used multiple launchers throughout the campaign. This has compensated for the use of Air Force and reinforced the usefulness of missiles and rockets in future war vis-a-vis Air Force, because Air Force today is very costly. An aircraft will be costing as much as 1,500 crores to 1,600 crores, and an aircraft loss makes a bad news. It's a big economic loss because they are very costly. While for the same aircraft, one can have large number of missiles, which even when shot down doesn't create too much of a problem. The Russians have used the Kinzhal hypersonic missiles in Ukraine for the first time. In fact, this has become a place where all kinds of weapons have been tested, have been fired, etc. And they have been quite useful. As far as Ukraine is concerned, they have not been able to counter Russia's long-range missiles. It shows that missile shield or a missile defense is very much required. As far as the air defense is concerned, Russians have had targeted Ukraine's ground-based air defense system with ballistic and cruise missiles, anti-radiation missiles, unguided weapons. However, what has not been targeted is Ukraine's mobile air defense, which is very active, which keeps on moving from place A to place B, and their detecting is not very easy. So they have proved useful. The Ukrainians have used a large number of anti-tank weapons as well as large number of anti-aircraft weapons, and they have proved very effective in shooting down the Russian aircraft. As far as the battlefield transparency is concerned, every citizen today has a smart mobile phone. So this acts as an important surveillance element, and there are literally thousands of videos which are floating around every day from the captured area, which is able to keep surveillance on the Russian forces. In the modern warfare, deception and surprise is not going to be easy, because battlefield transparency under the advanced surveillance systems is very thick. So therefore, ground forces need to reorient themselves and train themselves in fighting in a transparent battlefield. Now, after having analyzed the air operations both of Ukraine and Russia, what are the capability and underestimated that of the Ukraine? The Russian military leadership failed to give an honest and objective advice to President Putin. Now a time has come for the Indian leadership to provide country's political leadership with a clear-eyed appraisal of India's military preparedness. We all know that as far as our Air Force is concerned, we are supposed to have 44 squadrons, we have 31 squadrons. Out of that, only state-of-the-art are the Sukhoi squadrons. The mix series has to be replaced. As far as Jaguars and the Mirages are concerned, they are undergoing upgradation. So therefore, we need to definitely increase our air power. The Indian Air Force will also have to revise its tactics in the era of shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles, which are a standoff weapon. In fact, something similar was used by the Pakistanis in the Kargil war, and it created a lot of problem for the Indian Air Force. So how to fire at these people from a standoff distance is a huge challenge. The Indian Armed Forces rely a lot on the Russian tanks, artillery, rockets, etc. And the Russian Sukhoi 30 MKI is a backbone of the Indian Air Force. Now the Ukrainian war shows an era of low-tech war as based in Second World War, and it's leading to a war of attrition without any clear winners. So investigating in dedicated suppression, destruction, enemy air defense is very important. Identification of friend and foe is important. We got to have an integrated air defense system, and we got to have defenses against low-cost assets such as drones. Important lesson that is to draw from here is the use of technology in using drones, loitering ammunition, Stinger, man-portable missiles, and many more. We need to invest more heavily in the high-end technology. The handheld portable air defense system has been very effective, and its use in large number has ensured that our Air Force, as powerful as Russia, has not been able to do what it wanted to do. In fact, one of the Ukrainians has commented, if Russia has more aircraft, we have more anti-aircraft weapons. Poor leadership, quality of soldiers has been a bane of weakness in Ukraine. Despite best technology available, the conscription soldiers have not done their job. Why the Ukrainians have been more motivated. The future wars also need to be fought with indigenous weapons and equipment. We therefore have to make ourselves self-reliant, and Atmanirbharta in defense is the need of the hour. I think the biggest takeaway from this war is, when the chips are down, you have to fight your battles alone. USA may be your strategic partner, Russia may be your trusted partner, but when it comes to war with China, we'll have to be ready to fight a two-front war, one against China, one against Pakistan, and maybe even a three-front war that including our rear areas will not be safe. In view of aggressive China, we need to modernize our military resources, carry out military preparation. We need to carry out capability to develop capabilities in a full spectrum of conflict, including multi-domain operation. We have to keep on updating our doctrines, equipment, training and tactics so that we are able to face the new challenges that we are facing in this war regularly and repeatedly. I think I'll stop here. If there are any questions, I'll try and answer. If you like the video, please like it and share it with as many people as possible. Jai Hind.